Welcome back. You're listening to Ask the CIO, sponsored by Tenable on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is Rob Baker, the Command Information Officer for the Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command. Now, Rob, before break, we're learning a little bit about how you all approach cybersecurity around operational technology. The Enclave piece is really interesting in the fact that you learned, 4, 5, 6 years ago now that you have to maybe have those two separate pieces and to ensure better security. Let's move forward a little bit because now there's the rise of IoT devices, Internet of Things. You have the rise of these more smarter sensors. You have the rise of operational technology that is acting more like IT, which causes probably more complexity and more challenges. So let's talk a little bit about how you're incorporating all these devices into that risk management strategy. You mentioned 8500.
So we have created this thing that we call the Control Systems Platform Enclave. And it is a suite of equipment that does two things. One, it allows the operators, the Public Works Department folks, the ability to operate their control systems from a remote location so that they don't have to go out and set the thermostat and do a manual set. And it also allows things like security and access control to facilities. It allows for, fire alarms and things like that to be remotely managed, and also fire suppression systems. But then, some of the advanced metering infrastructure that came in about during the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act has been leveraged to monitor things. But we put all of that into this Control Systems Platform Enclave construct. And using a reference network architecture, we're able to secure the data flow, allow for wide area network connectivity from installation to installation so that at the region level, this is all aggregated and managed, but at the same time, maintaining a separation from the internet, as we mentioned earlier. It also allows us to do continuous monitoring of these control systems so that we know, for the operator, is it operating as it's supposed to, right? So it's not just about cybersecurity, it's also about accomplishing the mission, right? You have to do both. And so the operators of the equipment can manage these remotely from a facilities operations center, and they can see if it's in spec or in threshold, or maybe send a trouble team out if they see that some HVAC, for example, has its pressure incorrect in one of the valve areas or something like that. But at the core of this, we maintain this ability to maintain a situational awareness of the cybersecurity posture of the systems as well. And recently we've started to pilot, or prototype is a better word, software-defined networking in a couple of locations that are looking very promising in order to even further isolate these from the internet.
All right, I definitely want to go back to the SDN discussion, but before I do that, let me go back to, so if they're able to do a lot of things remotely, operate control systems, set the thermostat, aren't they doing that through the public internet, or do they have to be hardwired in somehow?
No. They're using the, so this enclave that we created prior to maybe 2014, but let's go back to 2009 just for a second. American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. A lot of these advanced metering infrastructures and other smart technologies started to come in as a result of the ARRA. And we had to create a platform for them to operate on. At the same time, we created the cybersecurity foundation in the platform. And so we created this control system platform to do both at the same time, but it's isolated from the internet. it's in a closed network. And so, for example, at Naval Station Norfolk, there is a lot of this infrastructure that is managed from one location for an entire region of the Navy region, Mid-Atlantic, which goes from Morehead City, North Carolina, all the way north to Maine, and west out to Great Lakes. All of those are connected back to this regional hub, so to speak, at Navy Region Mid-Atlantic, and managed from there. But the actual NAVFAC employees, the Public Works Department employees who go out and do trouble calls and fix things, are still located at their respective installations and bases throughout that region. I don't know if that makes sense. They're not using the internet. They're using the isolated platform Enclave network.
Okay, I guess the way we think about it generally when we're not involved in the OT world is, oh, I'm doing something remotely. I have my iPhone. I get on an app. If I'll give you the perfect example.
We've got
I have a Nest in my house.
Systems that they do this.
Perfect.
They do this with, and again, it's that on-prem concept that we talked about. So, Microsoft has an Azure cloud, right? But they also give you and we don't use Microsoft Azure. I'm just using it as an example. We do use Azure for stuff, but not for this. In fact, we're a heavy Azure user, but we could also get an Azure stack and put it right in our inside our network and do the very same thing with Azure, but it's on-prem, not connected to the internet and to the cloud, not connected to the public cloud. Key distinction.
Very important. So
we're using cloud technology. It's just on-prem.
So one of the key pieces to this is this idea of risk management and the risks that come with the growth of these smart technologies, smart metering. How has that impacted your approach to the 8500? Did the 8500 was even written in a way that took into account OT, or was it more of an IT that you had to kind of turn left a little bit with it to get it with an OT flavor?
I'll be honest with you. I thought one of the most remarkable things about that instruction was that it included, and it's called platform IT. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. We're going to have to do something with this. Not that we weren't doing, not that we were completely ignoring it before that, but now it was like, wow, this is serious. We're going to have to do this. And it changed from DIACAP at that time, Rob, to risk management framework. And the NIST 853 is an awesome book. And it's been updated. I think it's on its 3rd or 5th revision now. But then the really cool thing that happened was the NIST 882 and this framework for critical infrastructure and what it wanted you to do from just a standardized way of approaching your critical infrastructure. I thought that was like, wow, for the very first time, we had something that was at least like a security guide for how to deal with operational technology from a security perspective. We already knew, if you think about the Defense Information Systems Agency, they were maintaining the STIGs, the Security Technical Implementation Guides for various operating systems and things, but we never really had a set of controls that were telling us this is how you need to protect operational technology. So I think, to the great credit of both NIST and the DoD CIO at the time, coming out with the DoD 8500 and the NIST 800 series of special publications, that really helped us in a great way to just perform our mission in a much more efficient and secure way.
I'm glad you brought up the NIST publications. Obviously, it's one of those things that are really important, but there's some challenges around the compliance. Can you maybe help me understand how do you kind of balance the compliance for OT devices with using 882, but also 853?
So there's approximately 900 controls, security controls, and a whole nested group of, tens of thousands of actual ways to employ those controls. Again, I think it was just the fact that here is this way of doing it. It's not, a lot of times people want to do IT on OT and don't understand the difference. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest things is, if it wasn't for these publications, I still think we would be a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of getting the OT secured the way the OT needs to be secured, because OT operates a lot differently from the way normal IT operates. Like a desktop computer or a server has just a ridiculous number of permutations that can occur inside of that server. But when a control system is set up to operate, it typically only does a few predictable things, and you can pay attention to those. So what we're able to do is, we call it tailoring. We're able to tailor these security controls in such a way that it meets the compliance requirements, and at the same time doesn't cause some of the challenges that would exist in a more complex traditional IT business system environment, if that makes sense.
It does, and it's actually really helpful, because one of the big complaints I hear about the NIST publications is, yes, they're great, but there's too many, right? 900 controls, which ones you use? And if you don't use all 900, do you have a reason why? And then it gets a whole path of IGs and stuff. So we won't go down there. But I think you're right. Understanding how to apply those controls to an OT system that's a much more simpler system. Now they're getting more complex, and that's something that we'll talk about in the next segment.
You're absolutely right. They are getting more complex.
Yeah. Well, Rob, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about why they're more complex. My guest today is Rob Baker, the Command Information Officer for the Naval Facility Engineering Systems Command. I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to Ask the CIO, sponsored by Tenable on Federal News Network.